The caterhamracer.com Season 8 Championship is sponsored by Just Add Lightness, first for Caterham LED lights and in-car communications. By design and display structures, immerse yourself in worlds beyond with bespoke projection screens. By DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage. And by one-to-one on-track coaching with simulator training with Ryan Hooker. And also in association with Darren Burt Performance Driver Coach and FP0 Simulators. So, this is it. After 7 race meetings of back and forth action at the top of the table, tonight we finally crown and find out who wins the Season 8 title in caterhamracer.com. It's guaranteed to be one of 2 men, David Rowe or Christian Szaruta. The title will be going home to a DPR Motorsport driver. The big question to answer tonight is, which one? And what a place to come and do it, because as some of the Caterham Motorsport grid will be doing so in real life next weekend, we've come to one of the finest and most incredible circuits in the world. Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium. It is nestled in the Ardennes forest, and it is a circuit which certainly is one of the greatest in the world, and sure to provide the perfect backdrop and for the perfect spectacle, the perfect conclusion to what's been an incredible back and forth title fight all the way from start to finish. Once again, Scott Woodwiss and Chris Hutchinson in the commentary box to run you through all of the action here. And Chris, once again, it's incredible that we've done this 7 times before and found either champions or winners of particular knockout tournaments. Once again, we crown another caterhamracer.com champion. It is going to be one of 2 men. I guess the real question is, who's it going to be? And judging on how close they've been throughout the season, and with just 3 points in it between them at the top, it really is anyone's guess as to which way it's going to swing this tonight.
Indeedy, yes. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this grand final event of this Season 8 Championship. Like you say, couldn't be closer between those top 2, and if either of them takes both wins tonight, they are guaranteed that championship. But there are plenty of differences of, where as we go up and down the field, depending on where they do end up finishing. And it's such a big open track, as we just watched some of the drivers struggling with track limits there. But yeah, big open track. There's plenty of opportunity, and toes definitely going to be a feature tonight up the long Kemmel Straight and up the back straights. So it's going to be exciting to see how they both get on. But also there's a fierce midfield battle for the 3rd place in the championship now. Paul Donkin looks to be pretty comfortable there, but he is already carrying 3 drop scores. If he fails to finish tonight in any of the races, then he will knock himself out of that 3rd place championship. And James Peter-Zenas is right there to pick up the pieces, as is Chris Skillicon, and John Lang's not too far behind as well. So there's plenty of action in the midfield just behind those lead 2 as well to keep an eye on.
Well, first of all, let's reflect on where we've come, because it has been quite a season of ups and downs. It's been following the real Caterham Motorsport calendar from start to finish. And we started, incredible to think it, all the way back on the 29th of March we started this season, back to a more traditional length of season, given the last 2 years have been slightly truncated, given, you know what, the global circumstances in terms of the pandemic. But Brands Hatch Indy was all the way back at the 29th of March. We then went to Snetterton on the 10th of May. It was June 7th at the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, and that was an incredible meeting in real life as well, particularly with the weather conditions that we had. Donington Park National, then it was Anglesey International, and last time out at Knock Hill on the natural roller coaster there is the Knock Hill circuit in Scotland. And now we come to Spa-Francorchamps. Now in the real world Caterham season, next weekend is when the official factory ladder of Caterham Motorsport will conclude, and they'll be having essentially a European super weekend, because not only are they going to be competing in real life at Spa-Francorchamps, but at the very same time they will be also running two of their championships, both the Academy Championships and the Road Sport title. They'll both be settled on the Silverstone International Circuit, whilst 270s, 310s and these cars, the 420Rs in the 7 Champs UK, will settle their titles in the real-world Ardennes Forests in Belgium on the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. So, given the season that we've had, let's essentially give you the rundown of where things sit coming into tonight's racing with the battle at the front of the battle. Now, this points table, Chris will have a chance to update it in between rounds to see exactly where we are going into the final race. But the scenario essentially is thus. It is 3 points on drop scores. That's the total which we're calculating it by. The total on the left in the white cells on the second column on the right is the overall total points scored. And if it was going by that, Christian Szaruta would have a 34-point lead. However, we run on drop scores with this championship, and it's your worst 3 scores to get dropped from the overall tally that gives us the standings that we have. So on those scores, it's actually David Rowe who leads by 3 points, 483 to 480. Now, a scenario, for example, if David Rowe and Christian Szaruta both win a race and take a second place each, so they trade victories and second places, that order will not change and the gap will still remain at 3 points and David Rowe becomes champion. Only when we start to see results other than first and seconds and lower down the order, that's when things start to get a little bit more complicated, because of course it means there has to be more active calculations to see where people are. Now, Chris's points table here does auto-calculate, so it will factor in the 3 worst scores and also change should they get the worst result than any of those scores in the mix. But it's going to be quite close. We also looked at the top of the third place there as well. Of course, Paul Donkin in the mix there with David Peter-Dennis and others, as we continue to watch the qualifying session. But yeah, looking at the battle there, 422 points for Paul Donkin, 409 for David Peter-Dennis, and 404 for Chris Skillicorn. John Lang, as Chris mentioned, is roughly there or thereabouts still in the mix, but it'll depend on his drop scores and other factors coming in on top of that as well. So this is going to be quite a fascinating night to watch, not just see who becomes champion, but also who ends up on that last step on the championship podium on top of that as well. One other thing to factor in as well is that for this meeting we gave the drivers a choice, and that's usually a dangerous thing, but they've chosen which car they wanted to race in tonight's final rounds of the championship. And given it is Spa-Francorchamps, naturally, as I think many of us probably would have predicted, they wanted the fastest car possible. So as they had in Knock Hill, as they had at Silverstone GP, they have selected, as the 3 cars available, they have selected the 420Rs. So we have 16 drivers tonight competing on the virtual rendition of Spa-Francorchamps, and that means, Chris, it's going to be some of the fastest racing that we've seen all season. 6 minutes to go in the qualifying session, and it's David Rowe who currently has the fastest time. No time for Szaruta just yet, but given how fast, particularly these cars are in real life and indeed in the sim, racing around here at Spa, I imagine, is pretty much an experience like no other, both in the sim but also very much in real life as well.
Yeah, it's a real opportunity to stretch the legs of your Caterham, and yeah, it's especially in the top flight 420R machinery, they really start to come alive on a circuit such as this with long straights. Some of the, it was actually quite a close run thing between our votes, and it was nearly the Academy car that won out, and that would have been epic to see the Academy cars going 5 wide up the straights as we've seen that in real life with the 310s and the 270s around here previously. They really are able to use that toe. In the sim world, the toe's not quite so strong, but you'll still see it needed. And David Rowe there with a 46.933 taking early shots. I say early shots, obviously such a long lap. 15 minutes in a qualifying session is not very long. They've only got 5 minutes to go, which will probably be only a couple more laps, won't it, if they complete this one. So yeah, it's tight to get a time in. David Rowe definitely got an early one, and as you say, Christian Szaruta not yet got a clean lap on the board. If he's had an issue with track limits, then that will be discounted for his qualifying lap.
I imagine also they wanted a circuit where they're going to get the most amount of laps per car, which they wanted to get the most amount of laps possible in, and given the Caterham Academy car is not the most powerful out there, and given that the 420R is the fastest car out of the 5 cars you'll find on the Caterham Motorsport factory roster, then it is certainly the car they want us to pick. And also, I'm sure it will be the one that gives them the most thrills and one which they can use the most grip and the most power at their fingertips if possible. So you're absolutely right, 4.5 minutes to go. Only 10 cars have set, well, if you want to call it a representative time on the board. If you want to count representative times, really, you can say it's the top 9, because I don't think that Whitehouse in P10 has put a proper time, and there is a proper time. If it is, then that's just his own pace at this point in time.
It might well count, Scott, because if someone doesn't get a time, then great, he's going to be in the top 10, isn't he? Even with a set, so about 3 seconds a lap back, it's still going to be a competitive time if someone doesn't set one.
It's very possible indeed, but we'll see if anyone else can improve. The benchmark is 2:46.993, so a fraction under 2 minutes 47 to try and improve. John Lang with a good time to put himself up into third fastest. The thing on the right hand side said fourth, but the timing tower on the left suggests he's on third fastest, so a good time from him. That's beaten immediately by is it Mitchell Haynes, I think it is, in
Max
third
Haynes.
quickest. So Max Haynes, forgive me. There's a few names I need to try and remember because I haven't seen him for a while. So Max Haynes goes up to third position, then it's fourth for John Lang, fifth for Blaine Cresswell, sixth for Mitchell Costa, seventh for Steve Arnell, and it's Chris Gillicorn, Richard Harwood, and Alan Curtis in P10. Paul Donkin, though, of course, currently taking up that front row spot, so we need to keep an eye and see whereabouts, if at all, on track is Christian Szaruta, because, of course, his lap will be one of the most critical to watch out for. And actually, as you say, if he has possibly misjudged track limits, there he is. He's on the back straight now, setting a lap time as we speak, so hasn't got long to do it. He's only got probably this and maybe one more flying lap on top of it, so 2 chances really to get a clean lap in. After I suspect, given that he hasn't got a time on the board, you probably are right, Chris. Given this is a circuit where you can use a lot of the road to a certain extent, it's given how strict a set of course it can be at times with corner cutting with track limits, that he has pushed a little too hard at times, and is in his lap time fully deleted. But you can see there, still keeping two wheels onto the actual circuit rather than all over the curve, although drifting very wide and going deep into the hairpin there at the end of the, I think that's Malmedy, I think, and that left-hander, and the Jackie Hicks corner here is going through a left-hander downhill. Given the fact he was quite deep in there, that might well compromise his lap a little bit, but I think if anyone's feeling the pressure right now, if he does feel any pressure at all in this situation, it's probably going to be Szaruta, given the fact that A, he doesn't have a time on the board, and B, the lap he's trying to put in has to be perfect, and C, he hasn't got that much time to do it to actually put a legit lap in. Otherwise, he's going to start pretty much right at the back, and drifting wide there is not going to help, particularly if he's already been pinged by track limits at least once in this session.
Yeah, let's follow him round for the rest of this lap then. Like you say, it's not been the perfect lap. We've just seen another score come on board for Paul Fernioff, so he's managed to get round cleanly. But you can see Christian's flirting with the edge of the track there. It's another uncomfortable exit. He's going to have to keep pushing on though. Like you say, he's got no opportunity to back off at this point. He has to keep this lap going. Even if it's another lap that's going to be pinged for track limits, he has to push to get to the start-finish line so he can start the next one and maybe settle that down. But he's going to have an awful lot of work to do if he's going to start from the back of this grid. And we've got just the kind of the top end of this championship left by the time we get down to the tail end here, so that he's not fighting with back markers anymore. He's really going to have to work, and it's not necessarily an easy job.
I think for him, the slipstream down the back straight, particularly up towards Les Combes, is going to be a bit of a blessing if he wants to try and make the most of it. It's not going to be a terrible lap, I don't think. He's coming to the final chicane now, so depending where the line comes up, he might not get a decent enough time. He might not get in pole position, but he might still get himself quite far up on the grid. Cross the line he goes. There's a 2:47.533. That's no 2:47. It says 2:47.3. I'm not sure there's a disconnect between the timing on the left and what's showing on the right, because the timing on the left showed he did a 2:47.3, but on the right it said a 2:47.5. So that's interesting. But even so, even with the slide, and that actually said something in many cases. The fact he went deep into the hairpin after the Lacombe section, and then got very sideways on the exit of the double left-hander at Pouon, essentially means that he was on for quite a mega lap, and had he not made that mistake, he might have been even quicker. Yeah,
I think you're right. I mean, but at least he's got that on the board. It's he's now in 5th place, and that's quite a different prospect from being right at the back of the field. I thought it's worthwhile. We've got 10 seconds in the session, so any lap they're on now, they can finish. And Peter Zennis, we've seen locking up there, but he's in that 3rd place battle, but Donkin is still ahead of him by quite a few places there, so it's just it's going to be tight for him. He's down in 9th place. Donkin, his rival, is in that 3rd place. Remember, Donkin really just has to score tonight in both races to move himself and solidify that 3rd place. But Peter Zennis here will be looking to see whether there's anything that can happen. And, in a race like this, you don't know. Finishing is not guaranteed, is it?
Definitely not, particularly with some of the some of the rough and tumble that can happen in this championship. Interesting that Max Haynes has gone to second fastest, only 36 thousandths of a second off, so it is a 2:47.0 effectively, but it's an incredibly quick lap time for Max to get himself that close. So Christian Szaruta only 0.3 and a bit off the pole time from David Rowe, so looking very competitive at the front, and given how close it is, they've got the top 10 covered by less than a second. I have a feeling it's going to be quite a slipstream battle at the front of the pack when we get racing in a few moments' time. Of course, there are two races, of course, two 15-minute races, so we're going to get roughly around about maybe 5 or 6 laps or so, maybe about 6-ish laps, I think, in this race, given that these guys at proper race speed are doing 2-minute 46s. I'm sure they'll do just about the same, 2:46s, 2:47s in race pace, so they'll do roughly, I'd say, they'll complete 5 full laps, and then I'd say a 6th one when the timer runs out to 0. So essentially, if Christians is finding himself a bit far back, he's only got, yes, they're long laps, but he's got 6 laps to try and get himself not just onto the back of David Rowe, but then to try and pass him, and then to stay there whilst David tries to retaliate. So given the length of the circuit, if Christian isn't starting ideally where he really wants to, as I think it's just him going there through Blanchimont, he's really going to have to make sure that every single lap and every single pass and every single corner he takes counts as much as possible in order to try and give himself in the best possible chance to take this title from David Rowe, knowing he comes in as the man pursuing him with 3 points back.
It's drivers like Haynes and Donkin and Lang who are going to really act as interference between that. Oh, Christian Szaruta shoves it on pole position right at the last second there. So he's actually put that by about 7/10 of a second. So he was just saving that to the last second, wasn't he? But he now puts himself, and I was just talking about the cars acting as interference. Well, he's gone and got rid of that interference quite rapidly.
Well, I was going to say, because as you were talking there, David Rowe popped across and did a very strong 2-minute 46.4, and then we're thinking, what kind of response is Christian going to have? But quite literally, with his last roll of the dice in the session, pumps in a 2:46.3, and that's a warning shot to make sure that he will line up on the front row of the grid in pole position for the first of our 2 final races of the season. So the 2 championship protagonists in reverse championship order, because in the championship it's Rowe ahead of Szaruta, whereas Szaruta starts ahead of Rowe for the first race. That is going to be quite intriguing, and I think the run down towards La Source for the first time is going to be very, very spicy indeed. So this is how it's going to sit then for the first of our 2 15-minute races to decide the title in Season 8 of caterhamracer.com. It is Christian Szaruta then who starts on pole position with his last lap of the session. He starts with a time that put him just over 1/10 of a second ahead of David Rowe, the championship leader. 3 points between them as we have 2 more races left to run to the side of the title. Max Haynes with an excellent lap. It leaves you about 5.5 tenths back from David Rowe, but he starts on the second row alongside Paul Donkin. Then it's John Lang and Blaine Cresswell on the third row, followed by Dutchman in his almost sort of home race in many cases, or the closest thing to a home race for Mitchell in 7th. Steve Arnell starts in 8th, and then Jamie Peters-Ennis, who has said in the past he's not the biggest fan of these 420R cars. He prefers the lower power cars because they're a little more drivable for him. He starts 9th though, good effort from him in qualifying. Chris Gillicorn will start alongside him in the end of the top 10. Then from 11th backwards, it's Paul Ferner up ahead of alongside Richard Harwood in the 6th row. Then it's Alan Curtis and Tom McEwing, who will be going for the Caterham White Group title next weekend at Silverstone. So hopefully he'll be using this as a bit of practice in some rather faster Caterham machinery. And Adam Whitehouse, Mark Davenport, and we're hoping for Stephen Henderson as well, but he didn't set a time, neither did Mark either. So hopefully both Mark and Stephen can, if possible, get themselves onto the grid. If not, it'll be a 15-car start. If Mark and Stephen are there, it'll be a 17-car grid. So, countdown is done, and moving into the race session imminently means that we are mere seconds away from getting our first race of the evening underway. So now that Christian Szaruta has done the first part, which is to get himself into a relatively trouble-free grid spot, which is arguably on the front row of the grid, alongside exactly where he needs to be alongside David Rowe, now comes the big question: what on earth happens next into turn 1 over these next 15 minutes? Because arguably we know that anything can, but this is the prospect of either going very well for somebody or horribly wrong for the other.
I think that's a really important question tonight as well, isn't it? With things so close, turn 1 can really be crucial. And Christian's in that pole position on the inside line, which is definitely the ideal one that you want to have under your belt. And so he's got that, but David Rowe's right there, ready to sling it around the outside. It's easier on the brakes. You know, you can just wait till Christian brakes on the inside and just choose a later braking point. It'll be interesting to see that. And then the rest of the field, if anyone misses a braking point, then that could obviously come into effect as well. Just quick, I just spoke to Jamie Peters-Ennis before the race, and he was was saying actually he doesn't mind the 420. In fact, he quite likes it. So he does enjoy this machinery, and the two that we're seeing missing on the grid, they did warn me that they may well miss this round. So I think this will be our grid, but it's a high quality grid, and they'll be putting on a good show, no doubt, for us.
I think that is pretty much guaranteed whatever happens tonight, but this is going to be the critical one. Just a reminder for those who have to be tuning in for the first time, Christian Szaruta is the car on the left on pole position. He's in what I call the Brawn GP Special in white, Dayglow yellow and black. Then it's the black and car with the green roll bar, and the white nose is David Rowe. And it is 3 points between them on drop scores in the championship. The run to La Source is going to be all important, but watch for the likes of Max Haynes and Paul Donkin and anyone else in the background. Time to get this show on the road for the second to last time in Season 8 of caterhamracer.com. We're ready to race at Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, the championship on the line. 3 points between Christian Szaruta and David Rowe at the top as the red lights come on. There's a bit of a creep from the front row. That could be crucial for a penalty. If not, both of the front row men got away before I think the lights went out, unless it was a very good judgment and the on-screen lights were lagging a little bit. As the top two head into La Source for the first time, Max Haynes goes up the inside of Paul Donkin. John Lang is in there as well with a good run off of the first couple of corners. But they head out to La Source, they charge down the hill and up towards Eau Rouge and Radion for the first time. So Szaruta leads then, David Rowe in second place. It's Haynes, Donkin and Lang going in for third, fourth and fifth. It's side by side for fourth. So they go up through Eau Rouge and Radion for the first time. So Hayes slotting into third place there. Lang will win the slipstream, but this is where the battles here in the toe are going to be all important. Remember, in Assetto Corsa, you have to be within half a second of the car in front to gain a toe. David Rowe doesn't have that. He's 6.5 tenths back as we're going 3, maybe 4 wide. And the man charging his way through looks to be looks like it is Paul Donkin, side by side with Max Haynes, but Arnell and Lang are in there too. Lang throws it up the inside of everybody into Lecom for the first time, side by side with Haynes. He looks round the outside into the first and the second part. Now they come through Malmedy, the right-hander, out of the Lecom S's. And now down towards Bressel for the first time. So, relatively trouble-free start, but I have to ask the big question. Unless that was simply just a lag between the lights on the top of the screen and what they saw on screen, that looked incredibly like to me like both the front row men got a jump start at the beginning of that race.
I am absolutely with you there, Scott. I think we need to watch out for whether they pull into the pits at the end of this lap or the following one, because that definitely looked like a jump start and it looked like they kind of egged each other on. Maybe they were looking at each other as the lights were there, but I definitely saw movement before the lights went out. So let's look for that, and that means the battle will be firmly where we're watching it now, which is Donkin leading Lang, Hayes and Costas, who's just got past Arnell.
Well, whether it is a penalty incoming or not, those two still are racing as if the championship is going to be a one-match shootout, because they're going side by side at Exton Double Gauche, which used to be called Pouon, and now they come up through the Fagnes S's and up towards the right-hander at Campus before Stavelot. Takes it onto that very long, fast back section, all the way back towards Blanchimont, and then the bus stop chicane at the end of the corner. So exiting out of Stavelot, the little twitch there of oversteer from the top two. Paul Donkin is trying to set off after them. There's a huge battle pack headed by, looks like Steve Arnell, with Mitchell Costas behind him, and everyone else trying to be 6th place backwards as they come out of Stavelot through Curb for Paul Frere, and now side by side up towards Blanchimont. You never want to go side by side, but try telling these two at the front of the pack, because they're going to do it. It is going to be side by side to Blanchimont. Watch through your hands. Is it going to work out for one of them? They're both going to run wide over the curbs, but somehow looks like David Rowe has remained side by side with Christian Szaruta. Now they're going to charge in towards the chicane. Down the inside goes Christian Szaruta. Not even one lap's been completed, and they're all over each other. And Christian Szaruta does go into the pit lane. This is crucial for the championship. So Christian Szaruta does have a jump penalty. The intriguing thing is, though, David Rowe appears not to. That could be massive for the championship if Christian Szaruta possibly uses as a drop score. This potentially, Chris, either is massively advantage David Rowe, or it just in general turns the championship battle completely on its head.
David Rowe has got 2 laps to take his penalty. I wonder whether he sort of... we got a bit of spinner there in the background. I think that's Costas spinning in the background. Number 44 there as well, also struggling. That's Chris Gillicorn caught up in all of that. Christian Szaruta comes out ahead of those, so he's been through the pit lane already and comes out in front. I think David Rowe has another lap to complete his penalty. He's chosen to do the opposite of whatever Christian did that time. He's going to try and get a clear lap out front. But like you say, this is crucial times. Has Christian made that right decision to go in early and now get through the traffic pack? As you can see him down here in 13th place currently.
It seemed to me as if his plan possibly was, if he was going to come back out, to try and come into as clear air as he possibly could. He has come out in 13th place. He's got about 6/10 gap from the cars in front. So he hasn't come out immediately in too much traffic, but he's starting to close them with the likes of Andy Whitehouse and Alan Curtis here He's going to try to get stuck in here. That was a car spinning. Most definitely, that was Whitehouse going for a spin. Now, we didn't see if there was any contact, but although Christian Szaruta must have been pretty eager to get his way through, I'm not suggesting anything, just the fact that we saw Christian Szaruta exiting Lacon as Whitehouse was spinning. It might just simply have been coincidental, given that Whitehouse was trying to keep out of the way over a charging Christian Szaruta, who has already got himself back up to 12th place. In fact, he's trying to pick his way through the pack quickly enough. He's got past Alan Curtis and already is up to 11th. So he's only one place outside the top 10 right now. And if David Rowe is coming in for this penalty, maybe he's trying to use the clear track he's got in front of him, not battling Christian Szaruta, not getting caught up with the back markers of the cars around him, to try and pull a bit more of a gap. The only thing is, Christian Szaruta is not wasting time getting around cars and picking through them pretty much one by one incredibly quickly. One thing David Rowe does have to worry about is the fact he's got Donkin, Lang and Haynes keeping him honest on his tail. The gap is 0.8 of a second, so they're not being an immediate threat, but given that they are still pushing as hard as possible, Rowe has got all the clear track he needs, and he needs to use this as much as possible now, because if he is going to pit in a few moments' time, he'll want to try and do so in as much of a gap as he can. And given that Szaruta now, of course, is already going through out of Stafford line up through curb pull, if they are coming through the pits, the fact that Christian Szaruta is charging up as much quick as he can might not give him so much of an advantage or gap. If he does in fact get out ahead of David Rowe, still given how quickly he's going.
Let's watch to see whether David Rowe then comes in. The pit entry's on the right. He is actually coming. He's slowed the car up a bit too much there. He's going to have lost time on the way into those pits unless he had another penalty to serve. So let's now follow Christian Szaruta as he comes around and see whether he can get out in front of David Rowe in that battle. He's been fighting other cars there. You'd expect that David Rowe, who was fighting in that lead pack, we can just see there going through the hairpin. You can imagine that Christian Szaruta had to go a bit slower. So let's just watch to see where David Rowe comes out. We are watching that white car at the back of this pack as they disappear off around that hairpin. Are we going to? There is that David Rowe car. He is going to be crucially in front of most of this pack. Not all of them though. The rest of them still have to fight. He's getting up to speed. This is a crucial time to see how many cars he can keep between himself and Christian. And at the moment, it doesn't look like there's going to be anybody between them.
This is the critical thing. David Rowe cannot afford to get held up in his battle pack because Christian Szaruta has him exactly where he wants him, right in the slipstream range. He's going to try and pull out to the right-hand side, but they've both got a wall of 420 yards in front of them to try and get through. Meanwhile, Max Haynes is engaged in a three-way fight for the lead between Donkin and Lang. Talk about turning up the heat on this championship battle. Side by side between the two contenders. It's Szaruta down the outside line on David Rowe, but David Rowe's way is blocked. He's got cars to his outside, cars in front of him. Tries to go on the inside line. Christian Szaruta runs wide on the outside of the corner. Going to go three abreast, getting past Paul Fernhoff. And somehow, even though getting over the curb, he's gone through, but he runs deep into the first part, over the curb and over the gravel, exiting through Malmedy, and he's into the wall. Christian Szaruta into the wall. He's off the road. So for the second time in this race, he has a drama. First jumping the start, and then off into the wall. And of course, there is a degree of damage involved in these servers. Now, it looks as though rather he didn't hit the wall at an angle that possibly would have damaged the steering or the suspension, but he did actually nudge the wall. But given how feisty Chris was in that outlap, at least to be that close to David Rowe when he came out of his penalty just after Christian had done a lap earlier, wouldn't surprise me if Christian straight back onto the tail of these three pretty quickly. But it depends on if Christian took any damage, and if so, to what extent, given the fact he knows that into the wall. I knew it was going to be a dramatic evening, particularly for this first one, but this is just turning it like Spinal Tap all the way up to 11 immediately. We're not even completed about 3 laps.
Absolutely critical times in this championship. Like you say, it was real critical that they both just got through that pack, or at least maintained it, and Christian just got out wide and the car just never stuck to the road again. He spun all the way to the inside. Like you say, it didn't have a kind of diagonal hit, which means that there shouldn't be any kind of mismatch in it. There shouldn't be side to side issues with that, but it depends how much damage at the front of that car, and it's like I said, we don't run 100% damage on the simulator, but equally you certainly could be feeling some sort of a steering effect. It's not what you want to do, but he's going to now get right back up to this pack in front of him and then chase all the way through to David Rowe, who's now got a sort of comfort gap, but equally he's down in 9th place, which will be one of his worst scores this season. So he's not he's not raking in points over Christian at this point.
This is quite literally the definition of damage limitation for both of them. There's a car that's gone for a rotation on the exit of the chicane. It's Sir Richard Harwood who's going again. He's now back down to the tail of the field, so that will at least help Christian, who's now gone to 10th past Chris Skithercord into La Source, so that's him back into the top 10. Incredibly, Well, he was only 1 car behind. He's now 2 cars behind David Rowe because David has got himself up into 7th place. Meanwhile, there is a battle going on for the lead here between Paul Donkin and Max Haynes. This is going to be golden for Paul Donkin, particularly in his ambition to be 3rd in points. But Max Haynes is making himself enough of a nuisance that the two of them are going to go into combat. They have dropped John Lang by about 1.7 seconds as they go wheel to wheel down towards the Les Combes complex. And Max Haynes sweeps in front, under brakes, turns into the right-hander for the first part of the chicane, and 3 goes back into the lead. Meanwhile, battle for the championship then. 8th place David Rowe. He's in the tow of Tom McEwing in 7th place. Good run from Tom actually. He started outside the top 10 but has climbed his way through all the madness in the first half of this race into now 7th position. You can also keep an eye on the timing tower with one eye on the battle for the lead. Paul Donkin's gone back through on Max Haynes, so Max has now lost back out to 2nd place, but we continue to watch this battle going on between David Rowe as he's on the tail of both Steve Arnell and Tom McEwing. And now as they come out of the right-hander at Brussels and now to the left-hander, which now has a name in real life. It used to be called No Name Corner. Now it's known as Speaker's Corner. And now they head down the hill again towards, as I mentioned earlier, what used to be called Pouron, but now it's called Double Gauche. And so as they come up through down the hill into this incredibly fast double apex left-hander, Christian Szaruta trying to get back onto the pace here. Inside the top 10, he's trying to close in on Mitchell Costas where possible. We're watching here Blaine Cresswell, who is best of the rest in form of having his own runners sweeping round the outside and wasting no time. Is Tom McEwing up into Tom McEwing is David Rowe up into 7th place. And he's not that far away from the top 5 now because they're in 6th place ahead of him, Steve Arnell. Ahead of all of them there now is Jamie Peters-Ennis. And again, doing that silent assassin run where he's not getting involved in too many battles, and whilst everything crazy is going on around him, Jamie again putting that performance in where he's just slowly but steadily and surely creeping his way up the order until he finds himself in quite a dizzying position. P5 at the moment, but given how David Rowe's charging right now, I suspect he may not stay there for very much longer.
Yeah, he's certainly got his pedal down, hasn't he? He's making his way through there past Steve Arnell, which isn't necessarily an easy job to do. Arnell, a very accurate and consistent driver. You can see there the Christian Szaruta still trailing, and in fact he's going to dispatch with Arnell up into the bus stop, the chicane as it is now, and Peters-Ennis is next on his shopping list.
So into the hairpin go the leaders then. Max Haynes getting the lead back once again, and John Lang has not got the gap back down from what was 1.7 seconds to about 9/10. So these two battling have certainly held each other up and allowed John to get back into the mix. I think we can also tell that Christian Szaruta's car, if it is carrying any damage, must be minimal because Christian Szaruta has pumped in the fastest lap of the race. That's how hard he's pushing to try and get himself back up the order. He is into 10th place and trying to chase after Mitchell Costas, but the fact that David Rowe's made significantly more progress through the cars around him than Christian currently has at the moment is possibly telling you that David Rowe's car's maybe in a little bit better shape than Christian's is, even though it seems to be quick enough to be taking the fastest lap of the race. Around the outside into Les Combes goes Paul Donkin under brakes, and the lead changes once again, but he gets a little twitch on the second part as the cars quickly change direction. And now through the right-hander, exiting Brussels. And as they come back up towards the as a Malmedy up towards Brussels, they're side by side again, and Max Haynes goes charging around the outside to try and get a better grip on the track position for the next corner, which is the left-hander at Speakers. If he can get himself up the inside, which he's trying to, he's got the grip to try and make it happen. They're still side by side on the exit. Donkin thinks, right, I'll shove it round the outside if I can. Runs over the curb, almost bumps wheels with him again, and now this brings John Lang back into play as they come down the hill towards Double Gauche. And now Max Haynes aborts that attempt and goes into Double Gauche on the tail of Paul Donkin, as Donkin might start to run wide. This might be the opportunity again that Max Haynes needs. They're going to go side by side again. And Max Haynes tries to push him out wide onto the curb, which he does. Here comes John Lang with the momentum up towards the Fagner S's. Can he go down the outside in second place? He's trying. He's certainly trying to get through, and Paul Donkin has no choice but to try and defend if he can. Tries to squeeze into the inside for the second part, but John Lang with a really nicely worked move could be up into second place if he can pull this one off, which Donkin is going to try and deny as much as he can. Up through the right-hander into Campus on the exit. Little twitch of oversteer from John Lang as he gets the car rotated. But again, all this battling Donkin does not need, because what he does need, get in front. And that's Szaruta off again! Christian Szaruta off again, this time contact with Mitchell Costas. It's as if Christian Szaruta forgive me for saying so, doesn't want to win this championship tonight.
He's got a lifeline because he's not had the drop scores that David Rowe has, so this will act as a lifeline. But nevertheless, he's going to start deep in this field for race 2, isn't he? He's not going to be able to make it back with only a penultimate. Well, he's in the absolute last place at the moment, 1 minute 12 to go. So this is their penultimate lap they're on now. So yeah, really not going to be able to recover that situation. Remember that out front as well, Donkin is fighting for third place in the championship. He needs 2 scores. He can't afford to have a DNF. So with all this close fighting, which has been absolutely superb racing, he also has to be a bit cautious that he doesn't sort of send himself out of the championship charge for third place. David Rowe, meanwhile, has got in front of Peter Zennis, who's been drawn back into the battle now with Steve Arnell.
So now on to the last lap of the race, and it's just extraordinary circumstances happening here as Rowe goes through in a big lock-up from Jamie Peter Zennis behind. He tries to fend off both Arnell and McEwen from behind. So this is 5th down to 8th now battling for position. Peter Zennis is just about in the tow down the hill towards Rouge, but he's got more pressing matters with Steve Arnell all over his roll cage as they come down through the compression of Eau Rouge, over the top at Radion, now down the Kemmel Straight again, and it is advantage very much David Rowe. Yes, there are drop scores that will come into play, which will certainly help Christian Szaruta, who for the record has got past Mitchell Costas and now has repassed him back again. But even so, this is at the moment is working out very much, it seems, more in favour of David Rowe, but we need to look and see exactly what drop score that Christian Szaruta will get back, and I know Chris will calculate this in between races to try and find out exactly what the star is going to be. I think
I shall try and get my fingers going, but it's changing all the time at the moment. John Lang now behind Donkin there, and it looks like Max Haynes has broken away a little bit for this battle for the lead. I don't want to ignore this battle for the lead because it's been absolutely superb racing, but obviously less important than the championship, with Christian's just dispatched with Mitchell Costas at the back of the field there. But yeah, this lead battle has been tremendous all the way through this race, and David Rowe is not out of the water. Remember, he can't afford not to finish. He really needs these points, and with that angry battle pack behind him, which were right on his tail, he has got a little bit of a comfort gap now, but it's not enough to feel safe by the end of this lap, especially after the straights that we're just about to head up.
Yeah, this is going to be all critical, particularly if he can hold off these 3. I think one advantage will be for him is that Peter Zennis is very much occupied with battling Steve Arnell, and also in there too is Tom McEwen to try and make more of a headache as much as possible. Paul Donkin, meanwhile, is in second place. He's going to have John Lang all over his roll cage on the run back towards the chicane and the checkered flag. It looks as though, for the moment, Max Haynes is away and clear by 1.5 seconds. They're going to head up through Kerr Paul Frere and now up through Blotchmont for the final time. And of course, the championship battle teams. Oh, David Rowe's down to 8. David Rowe's just dropped down to 8 position, and he's had a drama on the final lap of the race. What is going on with the championship contenders tonight? First, Christian Szaruta. Both of them jump the star. Then Christian Szaruta has a spin and contact into the wall. Then he makes more contact with Mitchell Costas. And now David Rowe is down to what is now 9th position, could be possibly 8th. I repeat once again, it's like none of them want to win the championship tonight, which is incredibly bizarre. Meanwhile, Max Haynes will take it to the checkered flag and he will take victory. It's a sprint for second place to a line. Donkin or Lang at the checkered flag at the left line. It's going to be only just John Lang takes it, and I think it was only by about a hundredth of a second between the two of them. So that was incredibly close between Lang and Donkin at the flag, but Donkin picks up 3rd place. Then it's Cresswell 4th. Jamie Peter Zennis is 5th. Steve Arnell 6th. Tom McEwen then 7th. Skillicorn 8th, and David Rowe crosses the line in 9th. That will be some saving grace to Christian Szaruta in many cases. Then it's going to be Paul Fernhoff in 10th. Alan Curtis 11th. Richard Harwood 12th. Andy Whitehouse 13th. Then Christian Szaruta down in 14th, and Mitchell Costas rounding out the top 15. And we still have one more race to decide if either of these guys are actually going to win this championship overall, because when they've been driving, Chris, I think, regardless of their stakes or not, it's as if one wants to get the advantage, then throw it away against the other, but then vice versa. It's been so back and forth, it's almost difficult to fathom what's going on.
It really is. I'm just trying to type in the scores in the background as well, so I shall be doing that, trying to keep busy while getting that done. But yeah, it's going to be tight, so let's run through the order, and I'll, in the background, try and get the championship scores ready.
So for the benefit of those watching and for Chris to run through scores then, this is how it sits then after the first race. So results of race number 1, it is a victory for Max Haynes, and he wins by 1.752 seconds. And looking at the gap officially, Paul Donkin missed out on second by literally 1,000th of a second. That's how close it was at the checkered flag. So John Lang finishes in second place. Paul Donkin, in his battle for 3rd in the points, scores 3rd in the race, but only misses out literally just by the skin of his teeth. Then Blaine Cresswell, 4th place. 5th place for Jamie Peters-Ennis. 6th for Steve Arnell. 7th for Tom McEwing. And 8th for Chris Skithercorn. Then 9th place is where we find David Rowe, who had that spin on the last lap exiting campus before Stowlow. Whether there was contact or not, we're not sure, because we only saw the aftermath of David Rowe recovering. But he finishes back in 9th. That will certainly be one of his worst scores, which means he will gain points back regardless. And then it'll be Paul Ferdinand in P10. Then we move forward as the session changes over to 11th place downwards. We find Alan Curtis 11th, Richard Harwood in 12th, Adam Whitehouse 13th, and then Christian Szaruta, with all the dramas anyone could befall, with a jump start, then contact into the wall, then contact with Mitchell Costas, ends up in 14th, and again he will have to rely on a drop score, one of his worst drop scores, to be refed into his points that will count. And he had to start all the way back as well, also back in 14th, but given how quickly he can move his way through, ultimately his goal will have to be to move fast, but to move cleanly and without drama whatsoever. Mitchell Costas also rounds out the top 15. So, out of all of this, incredibly, it still keeps the gap at 3 points somehow, because it's still 524 points to 521. So despite everything that happened, Chris, unbelievably, the actual size of the gap between the two drivers does not change.
And I think
have to ask one simple question. How on earth does that work?
And that is because if you look down the scores, these are their worst scores of the season. So they're immediately going to be put into one of their drop scores slots. So their championship totals remain the same. But what doesn't remain the same is the fact that now Christian's going to be starting, and David are going to be starting deep in that field, and they're going to be looking out. But yeah, it's absolutely nuts. But it's still all to go for, and it's going to be a case of sort of 3 places or so, and they've got to get to the top of the field. Otherwise, those scores won't count anyway.
So let's just try and fathom this one out then. If they happen to be into the top 2, for David Rowe to win this one, he essentially has to, he obviously has, if he finishes ahead of Christian Szaruta, or Christian can't outscore him by at least, I think, 3 points. Although that said, they are still on equal on wins with 5 apiece. So essentially, even if they end up level on points, it'll be whoever wins the race. If it's a victory that decides this, and they're level on points, it's whoever wins that race and is able to outscore them enough, their rival enough, that will take the title, if that makes any sense. If
I get a chance, I will do some live updates during the race to see whether we can figure out what's going on. All we know at this point is that they cannot finish that far down the order again, otherwise the championship will go to, the Christian can't finish that far down the order, because otherwise the championship will go to Dave. And that's ultimately they need to both move forward in order to start gaining any points on their championship total. And it's no guarantees, as we saw in that last race. Things get hectic in that midfield.
I think ultimately in my head, obviously given the gap is 3 points, I think ultimately really they both need to score quite highly, but ultimately in many cases I think that David needs to ensure, if he wants to win this championship, that one, Christian doesn't win the race, and if Christian wants to win it, he's going to have to either win the race and make sure that he can win the race and try and win it on countback of victories if he can, or try and at least outscore David Rowe by 3 points if possible, because he'll need David Rowe to have an absolute howler, and he will need to try and get himself up to the front as much as possible. From 14th on the grid, we've seen Christian Szaruta put in some pretty stellar drives. He's going to have to pull out the drive of his life here to try and make this one happen. Meanwhile, David Rowe starts deep in the pack in 9th. He's the 5th car on the left of his screen. That's going to be crucial. Well, the next 15 minutes, someone will be Season 8 champion. Is it going to be David Rowe or Christian Szaruta? Who knows what's going to happen next here at Spa-Francorchamps? It's happened already, everything in Race 1. Race 2 coming up there. Max Haynes and John Lang on the front row of the grid for one last time in Season 8. It is go. Now hold your breath, everybody. What's going to happen down towards Les Combes? It's a decent start for everyone so far. Christian already on his toes, getting past Adam Whitehouse down towards Selwyn for the first time, and they're going casually 3 abreast in towards the first corner. And Paul Donkin splits the 2 front row men, goes into the lead, exiting last source, and 3 goes into the lead down the hill towards Eau Rouge and Radion for the first time. Meanwhile, as for the championship contenders to come across the split, incredibly, somehow, Christian Szaruta is up to 10th position already. He's jumped up 4 spots. And immediately the car in front of him is David Rowe. That's the crucial thing as they come up the hill for the first time. They're 3-4 abreast across the crest because Blaine Cresswell's getting involved as well. They're into 2 separate packs already. But David Rowe's at the back of this pack. Christian Szaruta is at the front of the second pack to come down the straight. They're 4-5 abreast. David Rowe must be thinking, please don't come together, boys. Jamie Peters-Ennis from nowhere is going to come down the straight. They are practically 4-5 abreast, nearly 6 abreast down towards their column. This will never work. They're 3 by 3 in towards the complex. Someone's got to yield. They're all going to try and get through safely, and somehow John Lang does. Tom McEwen's gone to second place through all of that. He worked his way through. Now he ranks wheels with Max Haynes, and the man that benefited through all of that was Christian Szaruta, who's up the inside of David Rowe. They're at it already. 3 abreast down towards it, side by side with Steve Arnell, passing 2 cars at once, and Christian Szaruta already is up to 8th position. It is a demon start for Christian Szaruta from 4th to 8th, and incredibly, Chris, he's already ahead of David Rowe. Again, I asked the question, how on earth has he done that?
He's drifted wide there, though, so he's going to start losing momentum. But yeah, what an incredible start by Christian Szaruta from the back. He went, throwing it down the outside of the hairpin on the opening corner and managed to carry that momentum all the way round and got in front of that pack. And like you say, he is now side by side with his championship rival. This lap doesn't look like it's going to relent. They are already being 4 wide through the actual corners. So what is going to bring for the rest of this race, I don't know. But everything is right on the raggedy edge. Something can easily go wrong when the margins are so marginal.
Tell you what, David Rowe was so close to becoming a pinball there between Arnell and Christian Szaruta. He was lucky he backed out into the braking zone. And also in there too, it looks like, is Christian Saruta's old nemesis from race 1, Mitchell Costas. He's in 11th place, just behind David Rowe. But the man on the move who really needs to shift, and he's doing just that, is Christian Szaruta, up into 8th place now behind Jamie Peters-Ennis. He is driving like the championship depends on it, which it is, like his life depends on it. Never mind a championship. He's side by side with Peters-Ennis. He's up to 7th. It means he'll have taken 7 places, if not more, if he can get past anyone else before the lap is done. He's going toe-to-toe with Jamie. And Jamie knows he's not in the championship fight. He doesn't really care. He's going to hold on and push into the outside line. Rowe goes way deep onto the runoff area. And now Peters-Ennis goes to the inside line to defend, but he knows Szaruta will go across the line. Oh, that was close. I think he made contact. Would he be able to get the car stopped? To be fair, I think Christian Szaruta went to go for the move, and it looked to me as if he moved into Jamie's braking zone, because the car moved rather than Jamie doing anything else. To me, it looked like Jamie braked in a straight line, whereas Christian was trying to move across to try and force Jamie to back out of it. Either way, he's down to 9th position and behind David Rowe again. These two are now side by side on the exit of Lake On. How on earth are we going to settle this cleanly?
Yeah, I don't know. We were quite tight into that battle, so it's hard to see, but there were definitely some interlock wheels, which is never ideal, and that sent Christian wide and through that hairpin. I wonder whether he'll have a penalty to serve for that. If he does, then he'll have to ease off the accelerator for a period. Jamie Peters-Ennis very wide out there as they go up through Eau Rouge and up the top of Radion up here. But David Rowe and Christian Szaruta will not be split, and they are absolutely together on track. Remember, Christian has to put some cars as well as move up through the order. A little bit of touching there as they went up here at the end of the straight, and it looks like David has got a little bit of a run. He hasn't got an overlap though, so Szaruta will come out in front of that one just for the moment.
Yeah, and they both made it past Jamie Peters-Ennis, who was stubbornly holding on as much as he could. David Rowe looking back up the inside if he can to muscle his way through. He's going to try again, I'm sure, on the run down towards Brussels for the second time. He's very close, but he doesn't make a dive up the inside yet. Now their next task to try and move up the order is going to be Chris Skillicorn. Meanwhile, we should mention John Lang now leads this race by 0.6 of a second. There he is, from Max Hayne in second place. Paul Donkin is still in third. Then it's Blaine Cresswell, Tom McEwen and Chris Skillicorn's up to 6th position. Then it's Rowan Szaruta battling over 7th. There they are. They're just behind the scrap going on, but always now 4th and 5th between Cresswell and McEwen. They're going to get quite involved in the second. Also in there too is, I think, Paul Donkin and Max Haynes as they turn their way through. There's Donkin in third place. Out through the right hand. Oh, going wide there was Tom McEwen. He runs out very wide. Makes contact with Szaruta. Off the road goes McEwen. And Christian Szaruta was luckier than anything else with not getting involved too much more in that. Now, I don't think it would have been too much damage, if any, but I think Christian Szaruta was thinking, all due respect to Tom McEwen, I'm glad I wasn't the one coming up worse that one, because that was so lucky.
Regardless of the outcome of this, Scott, it's been absolutely incredible to watch the sort of toings and froings in what are only 15-minute races. How incredible to watch these things. Like I say, the championship rivals still absolutely stuck together as Chris Skillicorn is there side by side with David Rowe as they head on up, and David Rowe is there moved up past into 5th place as it is. So they're, even with all these things going on, they're still moving up through the field. There's Christian Szaruta trying to squeeze through a gap that surely didn't exist. Cresswell, there's a little bit of contact there into Blanchimont, and David Rowe sent right out towards the barrier. He's going to be able to recover it back, but is that going to have any opportunity for Christian Szaruta as he comes up into the braking zone for the chicane? Christian Szaruter's late on the brakes. Can he get it stopped? He can. He's on the outside of David Rowe. That'll turn the inside of the left-hander, so David Rowe has to give up that spot.
The pendulum keeps on swinging back and forth in this championship battle. At the moment, Szaruta only outscores David Rowe by 1 point. If there's going to be any drop scores going back on this one, they'll have to be calculated as they go on. As now Szaruta goes back up, diving down the inside to take 4th for Chris Skillicorn. David Rowe goes down to 7th. He's been dropped behind Chris Skillicorn, he's in contact. David Rowe gets involved. That was more contact with Chris Skillicorn, and David Rowe keeps the car facing the right way. What is it with these two getting into trouble? They keep on making contact with people. They're getting involved in situations that they don't want to get involved in, but they have to try and take risks to take points for the championship. Either way, it's like watching Bambi on ice ×2, watching these trying to hold on to their championship advantages. I'm always lost for words already. He's still got half the race to go, and there's no telling what could happen. Szaruta, incredibly, is now up to third place. Is that Paul Donkin with a problem? Paul Donkin slowing on the back straights, whatever this is for him, whether it's a wheel disconnect or something. He's now slowing on the back straight. He's now got it back going again. That was a rather bizarre problem for whatever Paul was suffering, whether it was gear selection or problem with his wheel or pedal or something else, but he got back again. That
could be a penalty, Scott. If you drop too wide on a corner, then the game will tell you must slow down for a certain period of line, and that sounds or feels like, well, that was it. The only other option, like you say, is some sort of disconnect technically that he was getting back under control. But he's dropped himself right down there, and that has put Christian Szaruta up into third place in this championship. I will try and work out in the background whether, and that should mean that Christian does win the championship if the positions stay the same. But you can see David Rowe there hard at work on the rear panel of Alan Curtis there to see whether he can recover this situation.
Yeah, best of luck trying to work that one out, because it might change on the fly.
It's going to change all the time.
Audibly, if you're listening audibly, I'll try and call out who he's where at one point, so you've got an idea of exactly who's doing what for the championship. So, Christian Szaruta then, bizarre to say this given how much has happened so far in this race already. If he wants to win this race and win the championship in style, given the fact that David Rowe he has to try and get back to him as much as he can, but given the fact he's now down to 7th, he's got past Alan Curtis, so David Rowe's back up to 7th now. Christian Szaruta is going to find it just under 3 seconds now. He is taking quite large chunks of time out of the top two. The gap is 3 seconds. He did flitter under 3 seconds momentarily. It's side by side, I believe, between Max Haynes and John Lang. Lang has the inside for the second part of Blanchimont, which he doesn't take advantage of, and Haynes gets himself back in front.
Putting the scores in, Scott. If it ended now, Christian Szaruta would win by 1 point. He's on 568. David Rowe is on 567. So there's only one position needs to change before we make it even from David Rowe behind, and then we'll see. It goes back to how many wins they've got.
But that's the thing. If it stays as it is, if Christian stays third and David Rowe goes up to 6th, and it stays that way, it'll be equal on points. But they both have 5 wins each.
So then it comes down to tiebreaker. Yeah, exactly.
Which is going to be another tiebreaker. So as if this championship battle couldn't get more bizarre, it's continued to do so. Now this is good omens for Christian Szaruta, because he's taking massive chunks out of the top two who are getting so engrossed fighting each other. It's really helping Christian Szaruta now to get closer and closer. He's now 2.2 seconds back as they go up the hill. There he goes through Origin Radion. 4th is Cresswell, 5th is Costas, 6th is Arnell, and 7th is David Rowe. And I have to say, I think given that there's a help between Costas and Arnell being nose to tail, and therefore they're getting a draft off each other, Rowe's going to have to really get a couple of strong laps here, or a strong lap in here to hope that the two cars in front battle a bit more to get himself closer, because he ultimately, to win this championship, needs to, the Christian doesn't get any more positions, and he needs to get at least one more steer, which means he needs to pass Mitchell Costas and or Steve Arnell to pretty much give himself the best possible chance of winning this championship, because of course as it stands right now he loses it by 1 point. If he gets past one of these two cars in front, he'll put it to level points. It'll then be level on points and on victories, so it'll go to count back as second places. He needs to pass both of these cars so Christian doesn't catch the top two and pass them in the next 5 minutes to even try and hold on to the title, and even then if he does, he'll hold on to it by 1 single point. That's how finally this race hangs in this championship hangs in the balance, with exactly 5 minutes left to go. And I think it's confident we can say literally anything could be about to happen in these next 5 minutes.
So counting back on second places as well, they both have 2 second places in their scorecard. So we're actually be going down to third place. So David really needs to get in front of these two cars that are battling in front of him and hope that Christian doesn't make one more, because that will put him outside of that the tie break, and therefore will come out ahead. I'll just go and have a see where I can figure out who's got the most third places.
But ironically, Christian Szaruta would score a third place. If they're even tied on that for coming into this race, it would give Szaruta a third place, and he would win it by simply scoring a third place and having one more than anyone else. So that's the key thing. Now, what could also be a benefit for David Rowe is that Blaine Cresswell is coming back towards these three cars here, so it could be getting stuff as high as 4th. There's Christian Szaruta on screen chasing after the top two. Now Haynes and Lang have stopped fighting, and the gap is now 0.6 of a second, so pace-wise, they're relatively similar at the moment. Gap is still 1.7, 1.8. So Christian's not dramatically at the moment in clear air closing in on these two. He needs them to fight in front to have any possible chance. Likewise, David Rowe needs the top two to fight a bit more. They have been battling, but not enough to slow them down too much. There's a huge lock-up from somebody. I think Mitchell Costa's going a little deep into the chicane, but he's now all over the back of the Dutchman. And that was a slowdown penalty for somebody. Who was that? That was slowdown penalty for Blaine Cresswell. So that's a free position game for David Rowe then. He's passed. He's also going to try and get past Mitchell Costas down the outside if he can hit the brakes. Because Costas isn't involved in the championship fight. He doesn't need to get involved in this too much, but he will for the sake of defending the position. There goes Szaruta in the foreground. The gap is still 1.5, so it's not coming down dramatically like it was before, because Haynes and Lang have stopped battling, and Haynes now has a 9/10 of a second lead over John Lang. So Zaruta's not dramatically closing in on Lang. Remember, he needs to be within half a second. As through around the outside goes David Rowe. He's done it, up to 5th position. So into 5th he goes now. And again, I think it does bring the advantage, I think, by 1 point, Chris. They're about to tell me differently. At the moment, unless Costas gets back through, it gives the advantage, ironically, back to David Rowe. Although Costas has just got through, he's getting the push from Blaine Cresswell. At the moment, he's kind of back to where he started.
Exactly. So if he only takes one of these cars, that puts back advantage back to Christian based on the 3rd place positions as he gets contact more with Costas there and Blaine Cresswell on his outside. Now he's got past one of them. It's absolutely honours even, and this is where we get Christian wins it because he gets the 3rd place from to this race. However, if David gets past another one, then he does then win it based on the fact that we don't have to go to a tiebreak because he will have that single point advantage. It is as close as it gets right now. Crucial things that we're watching on screen with David Rowe in that fight, but Christian Szaruta is also getting closer, so if he moves that another position out of sight for David Rowe, that's going to be complicated. But David Rowe looking like he's going to have a go at Cresswell as they go down into double gauche. Side by side is not a place you want to be, but at least he's on the inside of that, and I think he's going to make that move stick.
Yes, he has just. He's going to be careful of Blaine Cresswell on the outside, but just chops the nose up and holds on. The thing he's got to remember, these two, Blaine Cresswell and Mitchell Costa, as much as they are battling position, they don't care about the championship. They're there to simply fight David Rowe, whether he's in the championship battle or not. So he'll go for the position as much as he can. Now, Christian Szaruta, meanwhile, he has got the gap down to under 8/10 of a second between himself and John Lang, so he is in a better position now to try and attack John Lang for 2nd place. He needs to get past, in this current scenario, to actually keep the championship. Then again, even then, if he then gets 2nd place on the count back, it will then bring it back to level, and ironically Christian Szaruta will win the championship by getting one more 2nd place because of finishing 2nd in this race. So literally, whatever Christian does now, whether he finishes 1st or 2nd, it depends now on these last couple of laps. There is literally 1 lap to settle this championship. If Christian Szaruta wants to win this, he needs to get past John Lang. And what might help him is that John Lang is getting onto the tail of Max Haynes, and there is currently about a second between them or so. Christian needs to be within half a second. If he's quick enough, it could be. I can't believe we're going to say it is literally going to be one single lap of Spa-Francorchamps will decide the title either way. I thought real-life championship battles were tense. I've seen many in Caterham racing at all, but have you ever, and your particular championship battle when you won it in 2018 was quite tense among other things, but this is one of the tensest championship battles, real or virtual, that I've ever known, and there's still no guarantee on this lap. It really depends on what this man Christian Szaruta does right now. David Rowe is in 5th. At the moment, he wins the championship by 1 point. It depends now. Szaruta, if he wants to win this championship, he has to pass John Lang on this lap. Otherwise, the title goes to David Rowe. He's away and clear in 5th position. If something happens to Arnell, he goes up to 4th. That ensures David Rowe by another point. It is now all down to what Szaruta does next on this last roughly 3 or 4 miles to Spa-Francorchamps to decide if he wins season 8 or if it goes to David Rowe.
It's as close as you like. It's swinging every single corner, and like you say, this is the crucial gap. David Rowe, unless he makes a mistake, looks like he's clear of his battle. He's in 5th place and doesn't look like he's going to catch Steve Arnell for 4th. We will keep an eye on that, and behind Cresswell and Costas are also battling, I can see on the scoreboard. So this is the crucial camera angle that we're looking at now. Can that gap reduce? Can he get up to the back of John Lang? Will that move the score back to a tiebreak? I think it does, and therefore we would see then he would win it based on the tiebreak back to 2nd places. It's as close as you like. This is all provisional, but we will call it as well as we can.
Yeah, as I say, ironically, it'll be that 2nd place that breaks the deadlock between himself and David Rowe. He is all over the roll cage of John Lang's looking. If we look up the inside and towards double gauche, he has to try and force him wide, but Max Haynes is going to try and get away for his 2nd victory, but this is all crucial. You've got the feeling that Christian Szaruta will get the run on John Lang somewhere on the back section exiting out of Stabile. He looks to the outside line. John Lang defends it. Christian Szaruta is going to have to try and be bold here. He's going to have to try and be as precise as possible with this pass. If not, it loses him the title by 1 point. They're going up through Fagna for the final time, now towards Campus and Stavolo. Surely, on the run towards Blanchimont and Stavolo, that's where Christian Szaruta is going to have to try and attack here. It's his only chance to do it, if not into the bus stop. He's all over the roll cage, up through Stavolo for the final time. Max Haynes is away by almost a second, but this is crucial. This literally could be the championship-winning pass that Christian Szaruta needs to make. Here he goes, through Kurt Paul-Frere. They're going to be side by side for second place. He gets his nose in front. Can he go around the outside to second place to win the championship? He's going to be very close. John Langs holds his ground. Down the inside in towards Blanchimont. Can he go down the inside back once again? They're still going to be side by side, and Christian Szaruta got through to second place. That is championship advantage. Can he stay there for the chicane? Down towards the bus stop for the final time. John Lang dives back down the outside. They're side by side for second. Back down the outside looks John Lang. He goes back up the inside. He's going to go for it, but he closes. He can't do it. And so Max Haynes goes up the inside in to take victory for race number 2 of the weekend. And Christian Szaruta, with the pass on the last lap of the race, wins provisionally season 8 of caterhamracer.com. He wins it as he and David Rowe finish level on points, but that second place breaks the deadlock on tiebreaker. He gets one more second place, and therefore we think on countback, Christian Szaruta is provisional season 8 champion. Steve Ardell 4th, David Rowe can't do any better than 5th, then Costa 6th, Cresswell, Curtis, Skillicorn, and Jamie Peters-Ennis, then McEwen, Donkin, who we think should hold on to 3rd place possibly in the points, then Fernhouse, Harwood, and then Adam Whitehouse. Have you seen a championship battle go that dramatic down to the wire? I thought Abu Dhabi last year was tense. Goodness me. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you there. What an incredible end to that. And like we say, because it is so tight, we will keep things provisional until we have managed to do it. I'm just typing in numbers in the background, so I'll try and get it as accurate as I can and just double check and confirm. But at the moment, it looks like absolutely dead level on points, but Christian will get it based on the fact that he has one more second place, which he got on that very last lap. In fact, the very last corner of the very last lap.
It was indeed an incredible evens racing to decide the championship, and who would have thought it after all of that? It ends up effectively, we think, level on points. Well, here's the result then. Max Haynes takes victory. Christian Szaruta takes second place, the second place that breaks that all-important deadlock with him and David Rowe, we believe, being level on points. But it's that second place, that pass on John Lang on the last lap in the final few corners of the race and of the championship that we think has provisionally sealed him the season 8 title. John Lang held on as hard as he could. He thought about going back up the inside into the second part of the chicane, but just couldn't make it stick, and he holds on to 3rd place. Steve Arnell 4th, and David Rowe has to settle for 5th position. I have to remember also Christian Szaruta came from 14th on the grid to come up to 2nd place to win that, to kind of get that result. 6th for Mitchell Costas, 7th for Blaine Cresswell, then it's 8th for Alan Curtis, 9th for Chris Skillicorn, and Jamie Peters-Ennis rounds out the top 10. Then followed by 11th place, which is Tom McEwen, 12th is Paul Donkin, 13th Paul Fernhouse, Richard Harwood 14th, then Whitehouse rounds out the 15 cars that all started and finished. I've as I mentioned just now, I don't really know what else to say apart from that was quite a breathtaking finish to a championship, and genuinely one of the most unpredictable and kind of uncertain outcomes to a championship on the last day that I've seen, both real or sim, for a very, very long time. That was pretty extraordinary.
Provisional results on your screen right now then, Scott. I haven't managed to even type in everybody's. I need to get Jamie Peters-Ennis' score in there, who got the 10th place, I think, in that. So it's about figuring that one out. But let me just... that looks like it is... David Rowe has been put at the top of my score sheet, but that is not. That's the even scores. It's Christian Szaruta who has more of the number. If you can see the 48s, we've got 2 48s on David Rowe's score. We have 2 48s. Was it 3 48s on Christian? So that is 3 second places for Christian across the season, and that will break his tiebreaker. So I think that will mean Christian Szaruta is top of the pile when we put the championship scores all together.
Wow.
Incredible.
Yeah, incredible stuff. Very incredible stuff. And Paul Donkin was pretty clear there. 15 points on drop scores to take provisionally 3rd place in point. Jamie Peters-Ennis, though, beacon of consistency from others who just didn't finish the race or couldn't attend. P4 in the championship, I'm certain he'll be delighted with that. That's some good, consistent drive from him. He's shown some really good pace throughout the season, actually scored some really solid results throughout as well, so he should be very pleased with that. Chris Skillicorn as well, showing that consistency, P5, 6th for John Lang, 7th for Blaine Cresswell, then Costas, Curtis, and Max Haynes with a late charge. Missed 2 of the meetings, but still into P10, level on. He should be 9th in fact, because Alan Curtis didn't win any races, and Max Haynes has won.
He's just won the last 2 in a row, so he's literally won both tonight. We shouldn't forget that either, Scott. He's had an epic night this evening to put himself up there.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. As much as the championship battle has overshadowed a lot of things, kudos to Max Haynes for 2 exceptional drives. Definitely should not forget about that. He wins both races in fine style. And it's easy for us to say he capitalised when the others were fighting for the championship and made mistakes, but Max's pace was solid all night tonight, battling away with the guys at the front, and regardless if both Rowe and Szaruta had that penalties from the jump starts in the first race, that would have been a great battle for him getting towards the front. He would have scored some very strong results nonetheless on that side. I will be very, very intrigued to see what everyone has to say about that tonight, particularly championship protagonists. Probably should leave them until last, I think, but for the last time in season 8, it's time for you to go and fetch some drivers and see what they thought about that, because that is going to be a night where there's so many talking points. If we're not talking about them already, which I'm surprised if they weren't, so much going on, so much on the line for many people, and an extraordinary sequence of events that played out in both races to lead us to where we end up with level points in the top 2. It's absolutely unfathomable.
I totally agree. I'm going to see whether we'll start, like you say, we'll do it kind of in that reverse order. So we'll see whether John Lang, have you got us in the commentary box, John?
Yeah.
Hey, second place in that first race, and a really competitive evening's racing for you. Pretty strong end to the season, and epically involved in all those battles.
Yeah, double podium. I think that's probably the first time. And maybe could have squirrels onto the second step again on the second race, but just the last chicane, it's a tricky one to work out where to put your car, and I got beat. So.
Indeed, and really that was the championship pass. I don't know whether you're aware of it at the time.
Yeah,
but
I was just watching your spreadsheet.
That moved Christian, that last lap corner, so it was epic. But what a spectacular end to the season, and I'm sure you'll be obviously looking to the off season. But then obviously the next time we come on, you've got a good a seam of form at the moment.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get back up there. And do you know where I ended up in the championship? Was that 6th?
It's all provisional, but I think it's looking like around 6th place at the moment. Yes, that's right.
That's pretty awesome for me, to be honest. I'm quite impressed with that. So
I think you're also tying with Chris Skillicorn, so we'll work out the tiebreak on that one for you. But yeah, great stuff, awesome. And well done this season.
Cheers. Can I just give a quick shout out to Ian, dad of my mates, who's let me borrow his lathe to build some pedals that will at some point be finished. So just a quick shout out to him. Thank you. Cheers.
Indeed, you've done it very well. Thanks, John. Alrighty, so let's now go to Max Haynes, see if we can get hold of him. What an epic evening he's had. Max, have you got us in the commentary box?
Hello, hey.
Hey, Max. So what an evening's racing for you. I mean, unfortunately, the championship battle was so exciting. We didn't actually see your epicness, but you disappeared off up the road for both those races. I know you were flat out in battles for most of it, but by the end, you sort of nailed it on. Double win.
Yeah, well, I think in the first race, it was about backing up whoever I was racing. Sorry, I can't remember their name. Into the person chasing, and as soon as they started battling, I was able to pull away, and it was kind of similar in the first one.
Donkin and Lang, you were fighting with in those both those races, I think, to be honest. So yeah, but great stuff.
It was good racing all round.
What a way to end the season as well,
Yeah, I'm coming for that championship next season.
Yeah, I know you are. So we'll keep an eye out for that, sir, and we'll let you know as soon as all those the new championship is set up and ready for you.
Thanks, Chris.
Alrighty, so yeah, what a spectacular night for him. Let's now go to third place in the championship. We'll see whether we can get Paul Donkin. Donks, have you got us in the commentary box?
I have. How are you doing? All right.
Oh, we're very good. So you did solidify your third place. A little bit sketchy at the end of that second race, but solid and, a race-long battle in that first one. It looked epic.
Yeah, the first one was mega. I wasn't really sure what was happening with David and Christian, but obviously they had a jump start, hence why they come in the pits. So, yeah, us three, I think it was Max and John, had a good race. It was going to be the same for race 2 there, but I did get a slowdown coming out of top of Radion, so it was not good.
that sort of scuppered that. But up until then, the battles were great, and you had enough of a buffer in that third place in the championship. So it does look like that's been solidified, which is pretty good going considering you've got 3 zeros that you've been carrying with us this season.
Yeah, obviously I missed the first Knock Hill one, which wasn't ideal. So I knew I was kind of had to have 2 decent results tonight, which is luckily it's gone my way. So I will take P3. Very happy with that. Thank you.
Yeah, great result, and we look forward to welcoming you back when we get the championships back up and running later in the year.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. All right, Scott. Cheers.
All right, then let's bring in our championship runner-up. Then, David Rowe, have you got us in the commentary box?
Hi, Chris.
I don't know whether you got to catch it and you know the significance, but it does look like Christian may have scuppered you by that last lap, last corner pass, which made you even on points. And I think then the tiebreaker goes to Christian based on that second place that he managed to get today. So
yes. Well, have you checked
everything
and checked your spreadsheet?
Everything is provisional until otherwise stated. But yeah, what was going on this evening? I can imagine your heart race is still, absolutely racing along.
Oh, it's bonkers. I mean, So in race 1, Christian, for some reason, started rolling back on the line, and I thought, oh, he must have a penalty, and then he just jump starts, and then I just decided to jump start with him and receive the equal penalty. So he went in the pits, then I still realised I had to serve my penalty, so I went in the pits and had a slow down on the cut as well on the second lap, and then we came out together, and then he disappeared backwards. I thought that was brilliant, and I threw it off in the last lap. I threw it off in P4, I think it was, for no reason whatsoever, and that. Obviously, if it's gone to the tie break, that would have made a difference, I think.
It literally went down to you overtaking the 2 cars in front of you, put you into the lead very, very briefly, but then Christian came across a gap that didn't look possible and unfortunately scuppered you, which is, I'm sure, very disappointing for you. But you two were just stuck together like magnets no matter what happened. You just seemed to get back to the same bit of the tarmac.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't my best kind of racing this evening, and but it was more kind of a bit of risk management going on where we're trying to drive and try and do the passes as well as we could, and it was pretty dicey at times, but
it was incredibly close. Like you say, you had to have that element of caution. I guess sometimes that doesn't work out in your favour in those real millimetre perfect stuff.
No, you back off or back off too much, and then you lose too much ground, or you attack too much, and then you have a bit of contact, and it's just unbelievable. But it's been a fantastic season. It's been a good laugh. Christian, if he's won, the smugness level will be maximum.
We're about to experience that, I think.
And I'll tune in to see what he has to say about that.
Cheers for all your efforts, and we look forward to welcoming you back as we do next season of caterhamracer.com.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. Bye.
All right, then. Stand by for smugness. Christian Szaruta, have you got us in the commentary box?
Smugness. Yeah. Yes.
What an evening, and we're saying it's all provisional at the moment because we still have to double check ourselves, but that last corner, last lap pass looks like it's won you based on a tie-break scenario the championship for season 8.
Superb. I wasn't sure. I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea what the scores on the doors were. I just knew, I was like, well, I'm just going to get as far forward as I can. Every point's going to count. And it turns out
it was absolutely vital. Yeah, it was very, very exciting to watch from the outside. Like you say, almost impossible as a driver to know what's going on in those scenarios. So it shows that you've got to push on for every single point, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And the first race was interesting with David and I both. Well, I didn't actually jump start. The car rolled backwards, which gave me a jump start penalty. So I was like, well, I might as well just go because I've got to go through the pits anyway. So I just went. But that helped me because Dave followed me and got himself a penalty as well.
He absolutely went on the beat of the bang of Szaruta going rather than the actual lights.
But
But the
That's
actual
very funny.
racing, it was ping pong stuff for you at many times. You were caught out. You've even been in the barrier tonight. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
all the
I
things
know.
that have happened throughout what is only 2 15-minute races, and still you come out somehow scraping the championship. I mean, what?
I don't know how
Unbelievable.
that's worked out how it has, but highly satisfying and most amusing to me, of course.
And not the first sim championship for you this year either, so really strong on that, and it's great to have you here at caterhamracer.com showing what can be done. And whilst we've had an interesting end to the season, it was the opening start to the season that you both had that really meant that you could have a scrappy night tonight and still come away with it.
Yeah, it was. I wouldn't call this our finest moment or our finest race, but certainly entertaining.
Absolutely
Shall we say.
exciting to watch. Congratulations on the provisionally awarding you the caterhamracer.com Season 8 Championship, and more. Long may that continue. We'll see you next season
Indeed.
to defend your championship.
Thank you, Cheesy, and thank you, Scott.
Great stuff. That is what a way to end tonight's racing. And season 8 in general has had some epic battles all the way through the season across. I think 55 odd drivers have been part of this championship, so I'd like to thank all of those for being a part of this, and especially the ones who are regularly here and up in the top of the championship. It really has made these Tuesday evenings fun. I think I've lost you, Scott. Are you there? Still there? He's overcome with emotion. I can't hear him right now. I don't know whether his push to talk buttons are failing on him. But what a season we've had. And just to sort of keep you up to date. So obviously our sim racing season is over, but that doesn't mean that racing is done for the year, because we've still got the last race of the official Caterham Motorsport ladder coming in. So for the 270s, the 310s and the 420s, they will be heading to Francorchamps, you can see on your screen, on the 15th and 16th of October. And for the Road Sport and the Academy groups, they will be at Silverstone that very same weekend. There will be a live stream from Silverstone with all the action, and we'll keep you abreast of all the action that's happening at Spa as well. I can see that Scott is back.
Hopefully you can hear me now.
Yes, got you now, Scott. Yep.
I've no idea why my push to talk wasn't working, but I was looking to say before I realised it wasn't working that I think it seems like for as long as they both continue in these championships, that I think David and Christian are pretty much destined to fight forever. I think in these championships, because they do seem to go back and forth quite a lot, and they did that tonight. They did that throughout the season, and it's incredible that they've ended up as provisionally as we strongly state, that they've both ended up on the same amount of points and the same amount of race wins, and is literally a second place finish tonight for Christian Szaruta that we think provisionally gives him the Season 8 title. It all comes down to literally a second place finish that settles it, which is pretty extraordinary given how close they've been throughout the whole season, and to be level on points after that just shows that they are on their day just as good as each other. And I think, as I say, they probably are destined to essentially fight forever on track, and I think we can both say long may it continue, because they've put in some excellent action and they've entertained us, and hopefully they've entertained all of you that's been watching at home as well.
Indeed, I think it is quite a nice fitting way to end that season. So I guess we will be back. Keep an eye on the website caterhamracer.com for when the new season's coming out. Join up our mailing list if you'd like to keep abreast of all that. And there'll be some racing in between. So if you are a sim racer and like to come and join us for some casual races in between our seasons and championships, then do come along to caterhamracer.com and sign up as a driver, and you can get involved. And I would like to say a special thanks to you, Scott, for joining us throughout this season. It's been great having you on board as ever, and it's really fun to work with you.
Yeah, well, likewise, it's been great to be back doing this season once again. It's always a pleasure to do these races, particularly how many seasons we've done, which is now 8. And yeah, it's always good fun racing. There's always lots of familiar faces here, lots of people that do come back race meeting after race meeting and get themselves involved in the championship. I'm certain that season 9 will be just as popular, if not even more, than it already has been throughout the season. I think you said we've had some 55 drivers that have raced and taken part, whether it's been on the main race that you've seen on the broadcast, or on the B grids that we've had, which still exist to a certain extent, and still see some drivers contesting those wherever possible. I guess I'd say a big thank you to the two people who continue to put the work in for the mods, which is Ben Obro and
Jaroslav Cherny as well. Those two to continue to do the work in the back, and I'm certain we'll continue to do more work on these mods with even more feedback coming in from drivers in between the seasons. I'm almost certain. I'm sure that Chris is already putting plans together for some kind of a winter series, and then I'm sure season 10 and going to next season and beyond. And yeah, it's obviously Chris is the man that puts it all together. Chris is the man that puts all the racing together, and they organises all the broadcasts and puts everything in place for these guys to be able to race. And obviously, without his efforts since the pandemic started, obviously wouldn't have them. So obviously, the feeling is mutual, and I obviously reiterate what Chris said back to him, which is, of course, thanks so much for all his efforts. I know that all the drivers and teams and everyone involved will certainly echo that, because ultimately without him we wouldn't have caterhamracer.com. And of course, he's been quite Chris, obviously you've been quite the constant in the league and in the championships ever since it started.
It's been my pleasure. I love the community, and I love the fact that people stick around and they love the racing, and long may that continue. Just before we do the official championship thank yous, I just want to highlight that Andy Howard and Steve Arnell are putting a lot of effort in onto getting these mods working, and we will be seeing more cars, I'm sure, in the near future to fill in the gaps that we're missing. So the Road Sport and the 270s, keep an eye out for that. And yes, just definitely worth calling out Steve Arnell and Andy Howard, who have got a lot of work in there. But I think it's time to give our official championship sponsors their final thanks, and thank you on behalf of myself for all those championship sponsors for coming on board and allowing us to do things like this broadcast, and it's great to be able to share this with the wider community.
It certainly is, and indeed, for one last time, we say a very, very big thank you, the biggest of thank yous of the entire season, to all of the supporters of the sponsors and partners that we have for Season 8, because for one last time, we reiterate that the caterhamracer.com Season 8 Championship is and has been sponsored by just Add Lightness, first for Caterham LED lights and in-car communication. By design and display structures, immerse yourself in worlds beyond with bespoke projection screens. With DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage by one-to-one on-track coaching and simulator training with Ryan Hooker, and also with Darren Burt, Performance Driver Coach, and FP0 Simulators. To all six of them, thank you very, very, very much indeed for the support for Season 8. Fingers crossed that we have as many of you back for Season 9 supporting as possible. I know Chris will beaver away over the off-season to see if he can retain and also maybe add to that list of sponsors where possible. And I guess the biggest thank you is for everyone who has watched, for everyone who's tuned in, who's been a part of the community, whether you've raced or just tuned or watched back, and everyone who's part of caterhamracer.com. A very, very big thank you across the board to everyone. It's been one of the most enthralling and entertaining seasons, and it all came down to a last race meeting shootout between the top two. It ended level on points, level on victories, and it was a last gasp path for second place, the Brentwood deadlock. Provisionally, we say a massive congratulations to Christian Szaruta, who is provisionally crowned the Season 8 champion for caterhamracer.com. Now the big question is, what next for Season 9? Well, tune in, I'm sure, keep tabs and everything on YouTube and on Facebook and everywhere that you can follow caterhamracer.com for the announcements and news and what's happening. But until then, for the last time for this season, possibly for this year as well, for myself, Scott Woodwiss, and Chris Hutchinson, from all of us at caterhamracer.com, thank you for supporting and tuning in. And if we don't see you beforehand as well, just in case, have a fantastic Christmas and New Year period, and we'll see you, if we are racing next season, into the new year in 2023. But until then, take care, and we'll see you soon, very soon, for more caterhamracer.com action. Thank you very much, and good night.
Until then, goodbye.